welcome back to Coral Talks. It's Caroline, and today I have a special guest with me. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Howdy, hey, my name is Jennings, and I am an instructor at the Catalina Environmental Leadership Program, also known as CELP, out of Howland's Landing. And I'm so stoked to be here, Caroline. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you. Awesome to be reunited after a very long time.
Yeah.
And after technical difficulties too. So would we like to start today with a joke first?
Yes, please.
Okay. So why did the shellfish leave the party early?
I don't know, Caroline, why did the shellfish leave the party early?
Because he pulled a muscle. Pulled a muscle and he was like, ah, I gotta go home.
That's good. He's got to start daily stretching. That's so important for
Hmm.
our. Oh,
Yeah.
that's a good one. I'm gonna tell my students that. I like it.
Okay. That is a good one. We actually had it on morning announcements at school, and I was like, that's a good one. I'm gonna
Nice.
tell it. Would you like to tell me some things that you are grateful for
Of
today?
course. Today specifically, I am grateful for the rain. It's raining here on Catalina Island, and we still got program. We still got snorkels and hikes and team building and all that stuff. But I'm very grateful for the rain, bringing the temperature down, kind of just letting the whole island take this big breath. Um, and you know what, in part of that, grateful for a roof over my head, and grateful to be here with you.
That's awesome. Awesome things to be grateful for. And for me, well, maybe not the rain. Maybe not the rain because
Okay.
um it's been came a little bit unprepared today because we had formal dress. But
Mm.
also I'm grateful for having a roof to stay in while there is rain and having Wi-Fi um so that we're able to connect even though we're pretty far away. And I'm grateful for my health because everybody around me has been sick. I'm a little
Mm.
sick. Definitely reminded of, being healthy and not sick.
I hate when I get sick or my allergies are acting up and like
Mhm.
one nostril is clogged
Oh yeah.
and I forget how nice it is to be able to just breathe normally. So yeah, understand that. Grateful for health.
Yeah.
Hope you
That
start feeling better.
thanks. Yeah, that one nostril thing is definitely not the vibe.
Not the vibe.
Not the vibe. Because then when you're like, let me like sniffle it up, and then it doesn't work because one of them is very clear, and then the other one doesn't work. So yeah.
Not the vibe. I still say that with my groups. We still talk about setting the vibe. I love that you just said that. Thank you.
Mm. We still say Mamma Mia sometimes. So
Mamma mia. Yeah, me too.
hmm
Me
Mamma
too.
Mia. Mm.
It's so fun. Little
Yeah,
flavor.
exactly. Little spice.
Yeah.
Would
Uh,
you like to start us off in our special featured species
yes.
of this episode?
Yeah. I I drew up a little board. I just realized it's going to be backwards, but that's okay. The words are not important. I will talk about the words. We can just look at the pictures. Uh, my featured critter that I wanted to put a spotlight on today are brittle stars. Brittle stars are echinoderms, so they have a spiny skin and are related to other spiny skinned organisms. So things like sand dollars and sea urchins and other species of sea stars as well. These little guys are the fastest of all echinoderms. They got like a water vascular system that allows them to pump water through their body and move these little things known as tube feet, which allow them to walk and move their arms around. They all have this like central disc, this circular disc in the middle, which houses all of their internal organs. And with that disc, they're able to detach their limbs to use as a defense mechanism if they feel threatened by a predator, and then they're capable of regenerating those limbs, all from that central disc, which is pretty cool. There are like the internet will say there's over 2,000 species of brittle stars. And what I think is most interesting about that is the range at which they can be found. There are brittle stars that you can find in the shallow waters, like when we went snorkeling, and we showed our group all those brittle stars that I could find just under rocks. But then they also have like deep sea species of brittle stars as well. Some of the more common ones that we see around Catalina are the black banded brittle stars. And a fun fact, something that I have never seen before, but will see before I'm done, are bioluminescent brittle stars. Videos
Okay.
online show them like with their arms glowing, but
Uh-huh.
I would also be curious if there are species that like produce like a bioluminescent ink of sorts
Mm,
as well. So I just got to get in the water more at nighttime
mm.
to be able to see it. But yeah, I love brittle stars. I think they're super groovy. And thanks for allowing me to bring a little spotlight to them.
Thank you for the spotlight. No, it's really cool that, all features of the brittle star can be done within that little disc. That's so special.
Yeah,
Like regenerating arms, um,
crazy.
all the internal organs. Yeah, that's really cool. And, gotta go on those night dives and the night snorkels that you guys have at Kelp too, which is really
Yeah,
cool.
that's one of the best programs there is. I
hmm
love it.
Yeah, I think, as a class, or at least in our cabin, we were really bummed that we didn't get to go night snorkeling. Um, but we would love to go back and do night snorkeling.
Well, we'd love to have y'all.
Yeah. Um, that was a really cool spotlight. Um, I have a spotlight on cuttlefish.
Ooh, tell
Yeah.
me more.
Cuttlefish are really, I don't have pictures, but I do have hopefully ample descriptions. So cuttlefish is really similar to squids and like octopus. They're the same family, but definitely they're not octopus and squids. They have some similarities. They have two tentacles and eight arms to catch their prey, and they
Mm,
can blend in with their surroundings, even in complete darkness. Which leads me to another point that they are colorblind. They can't see color. They can only see like polarized light. And so that's what makes their blending in really special because they use their like light contrast to blend in. And so they're often called chameleons of the sea.
mm. Oh, that's
Um, yeah, that's really cool and awesome that they don't even need to see their surroundings to blend in. Cuttlefish are also found in the sandy floors over
mm,
in the Mediterranean seas and like the Atlantic oceans. Um, the fun fact is that they only live 1 to 2 years. So cuttlefish get sexually mature around like 12, 14 months, and then they lay their eggs in spring, summertime. But after their offspring is born, they die, which is really sad because they're awesome and they're cool. If you look on Google, Google will say that it has over like 1,000 species, and there's some that are like super colorful and neon and bright, and then some of
mm.
them that are just jewel. But I mean, ultimately, like if they can colorblind, I feel like they have a wide variety of, color.
Yeah,
hmm Um, and you know, even though cuttlefish and octopus are in the same family, cuttlefish actually eat octopus sometimes.
really.
hmm And they also eat each other. That's another surprising thing that I found out if they're
Uh,
in dire needs.
yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, that was my spotlight. Very grateful to be able to talk about some cuttlefish, shining the spotlight on cuttlefish.
yeah.
hmm Um, Speaking of creatures, I saw on the kelp Instagram, I just remembered, um, cowries, chestnut cowries that you guys saw during the winter time. Um, do you know
Yeah.
what?
These guys?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Is that a sea snail?
Oh, I want to say yes. Right. What is a snail if not just like a fancier slug, right? So it is like a gooey sort of organism. I've only ever seen a live one once. And this is like one of two of these shells that I have ever found on our beach. It's crazy you brought that up. I just had that right over there. I've only ever seen one live one before on a snorkel, and it was like latched onto a piece of algae.
Mhm.
And I thought it was just like the shell, and I like tried to like pick it up to look at it, and I couldn't lift it. So I immediately let go and just kind of watched it. I wasn't really able to see what it looked like or it moving. I think after I touched it, it like went into like defense mode. Um, I want to say yes that they're a type of sea snail,
Mm,
but that's yeah.
yeah,
That's awesome that you follow the Instagram.
I do. I found you guys's the recipe for that delicious, delicious. I forgot what it was. It wasn't a brownie. Oh, it was the
The
brownies.
the cookies, the
It was the
garden cookie.
it was the garden cookies. I found the recipe on it pinned. I'm so happy.
Yeah, they are a species of sea slug. You are correct.
It's really cool that
Yeah.
you guys got to see new creatures as the
Yeah.
seasons
Well, and
change.
creatures in a new way too, you know?
Mhm.
Like I've had only ever seen these shells. There's another one. They're known as like sea buttons, and they have smaller shells. I think they kind of look like a football,
Mm-hmm.
but they have that same like opening on the
They
bottom. And
mm-hmm.
so I've only ever seen the shells. So yeah, to be able to actually see them like alive and interacting with their environment was really, really, really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's always nice to see like animals being in their surrounding and doing their own thing. So now that we've talked about our feature species, should we move on to marine protected areas?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I took some notes. I have some information about marine protected areas, specifically to Catalina Island.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that is my ecosystem I get to play around in. And so on Catalina, there are 7 total MPAs or marine protected areas. There are 5 SMCAs, which stand for State Marine Conservation Areas. Our Cove Howlands is a part of one of those from Lion's Head to Arrow Point. It is like a no take on invertebrates. So all of those like the cowries, things like that, abalone, the lobsters, those species are protected in the coves and like along that whole stretch from again Lion's Head to Arrow Point. Um, and so with that being one of them, there's 4 others around the island. There are 2 no take MPAs, so absolutely zero fishing, lobstering, any of that stuff in those areas is a big like eh. And then there is one state marine reserve, which is located in Avalon at a dive park, which is totally free. If anybody ever finds themselves in Avalon, maybe in a season where the water's a little warmer, so you can kind of just go in with the snorkel and fins. Some of the biggest fish I have ever seen are in that state marine reserve, which is really, really cool. And so yeah, it's really awesome to be able to using that as like, kind of a jumping point for conversation as to like why do we want to protect these areas? Why is it important to protect and promote biodiversity? Things like that.
And how would you say like these marine protected areas help the creatures there, or the environment there?
Yeah. Uh there's a phrase that a mentor of mine once said where it's like more fish attract more fish. So the more fish that you have living in an area, more fish will see that as sort of this hotspot of opportunity to eat and live and reproduce. And so having these protected areas, these designated sanctioned areas in which fish are, or invertebrates, species in general, whatever it is that, the higher beings within the government designate an area to be, um, that promotes biodiversity. More things will want to be there. Fish that live longer and older fish lay more eggs. So more eggs being laid means, like the Garibaldi will lay up to 80,000 eggs at a time. Not all 80,000 of those.
Not all 80,000 Garibaldi eggs will hatch, however, but the ample presence of the Garibaldis that do hatch will be added to that hotspot. I think what Jennings was trying to say. Sorry, Wi-Fi difficulties. The audio got cut off.
To bring other things in to help fill niches and to create a more productive ecosystem where everything is kind of connected with one another. Um, I think is one of the reasons they're so important.
I see. Yeah, that definitely is important because I get what you're saying. Like, one thing attracts the other. If you have a group of fish, then that attracts more fish. That creates like a larger community. And then when like fish lay eggs, not all of them will survive, but in a protected area, more of them can survive and
Mhm.
kind of like thrive in their own community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you think about like all those things, all those fish living within that ecosystem are all eating different things, which means they're all expelling waste, right? They're all pooping, right? Which acts as this phenomenal fertilizer. Other things will eat it or it fertilizes the algae that's growing in that area. And so, yeah, you have all these things
mhm.
interacting. Yeah.
Yeah, nothing goes to waste. Even the waste isn't waste.
No waste in nature, one might say.
Really cool learning about like marine protected areas in the cove in
Mhm.
where you're specialized in. Um, and you did mention like state marine reserves. Is
Mhm.
that any different than like marine protected areas? Or is that just the same thing?
I don't want to say it's the same thing, but it's a more specific example of an MPA. Like an MPA, think of that as saying like, oh, grocery store. But then with grocery store comes, all these other different types, right? You could have a grocery store that is just seafood or like a chain, like a Safeway or a Vons or a Trader Joe's. So MPAs are just like what we call the idea of protecting a marine ecosystem. And so then that state marine reserve is just a more specific title that probably tells like the larger story as to how it was implemented, and the people that worked to establish it.
I see. I see. That makes sense.
Great
Um,
question.
Thank you. I was wondering about vessels.
Like boats and stuff.
Does
Okay.
that take play in any of like marine protected areas, or is there any like rules for vessels or like,
Yeah.
boats?
Well, so that's kind of the hard part, right? Is like it's not like people can put like this massive rope in the water to designate that this is an MPA. Right? It can be done with maps and technology, but for people who either don't know about that or don't put in the effort to learn about those things, they could just be in an area. And so, as far as I am aware, I don't think there's anything against vessels in MPAs unless it was a specific rule of that MPA. Our cove in particular, again, right, is a part of that no take for marine invertebrates. But we also share our cove with the Los Angeles Yacht Club. And so there are boats that come in and out of our cove all the time and are crossing from the open channel through the state marine reserve. Um, but they're allowed to do that. And so I don't believe that there's anything like that prohibits that. I would say that it's up to like the people in an area that if you recognize behaviors that go against an MPA or the State Marine Reserve rules and regulations, that like we report that stuff. We have seen boats in the cove setting lobster traps well within the range, like right in our cove or just outside of it. um, Maybe they don't know that it's an MPA, or maybe they think no one's watching. And so we have made calls, and reported vehicles that we thought were causing disturbances within those MPAs. Um, But there, as far as I know, and again, specifically to Catalina, I don't believe there's anything against vessels. I would say that the State Marine Reserve in Avalon for that dive park doesn't let vessels through, but that's because that's a safety thing. They have a bunch of people swimming there. But that is, I'm going to write that down. I would be curious if there were MPAs that just put more restrictions on the types of crafts, types of vessels.
Thank you for that explanation. That makes sense. And it definitely like has a lot of variety for the different areas and like marine protected areas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would be it's an interesting study.
Hmm. Yeah. Is there, I remember you were talking to us about how complicated it is to like apply for a marine protected area.
Did we
Like,
do the activity with the whiteboards, the four
yeah.
different whiteboards? Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Is there like who do we even like talk to if we want if one were to say they think that this area should be a marine protected area?
What a phenomenal question. Everything that I'm about to say is just a guesstimation because I have not tried that myself. I would say that you could look into your local fish and wildlife refuge organizations. They at least, if not being the group of people to help like establish it, would be able to, I would say, point you in the right direction of going about getting one of those areas established. There's also your local government officials within your areas that you can write to, that you can call, that you can, show up if they hold town halls, and make yourself seen and heard. Um, as to specifically who or what goes about doing that, I would assume it's quite different depending on the different areas. I wouldn't say that there's an organization somewhere in Maine that is managing the MPAs here on Catalina, right? But maybe that's where their office is. That would be a crazy guess if I just got that right. Um, but so I would say local fish and wildlife would be a phenomenal place to start, because they might even be able to tell you that there already is protection within an area.
That is just something that I've been wondering because it's like, of course, there's certain already established marine protected areas, but just letting one started is interesting. And I just thought of how does one get one started?
Yeah. Like that activity demonstrates, right? You got
Hmm.
all these different parties, all these different people that have, different reasons for either wanting or not wanting an MPA.
Hmm.
And so it's a large conversation that takes a lot of factors into consideration, which is also so cool to see that, like, knowing that and then seeing just how many actually exist along the coast of California, and knowing that we have them out here on Catalina is really cool.
Yeah. Thank you for talking about marine protected areas with me and answering some questions and
Yeah.
like just helping us understand what it is in general. Within like the time from when we last met, I found something because I was researching about marine protected areas and I found that certain marine protected areas in like Hawaii and the French Polynesia and Canada are actually led by indigenous communities, which I found was really, really
Oh, right
cool.
on.
Yeah. And it's cool because aside from like leading and taking care of marine protected areas, they also have just things that they do traditionally um that are kind of like with the same concept of marine protected areas because they have seasonal fishing closures or seasonal fishing zones where like they follow moon cycles and the tides to determine whether they should be fishing or not, which I found was really, really cool. Um, and I like how because indigenous communities are more connected to the community than the mass majority of us would be because they have like a more personal connection with the community. So I
Mhm.
found it really interesting that they like not just like a rules and regulations type marine protected areas, they have their own traditions to determine like when the time of fishing is or when the time to respect the area and to let fish regrow and different practices like that.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, the we're talking about groups of people that uh lived with the land, right?
Mhm.
The group of indigenous people on Catalina, right? The Pimuvit absolutely understood that like that give and that take, and knew not to over harvest all their fish. And so yeah, there's a lot of different sustainable practices that we can learn and we can adapt for sure. Okay.
So now that we talked a little bit about marine protected areas, would we like to talk about leopard sharks?
Right on. Yeah.
Mhm.
The leopard sharks in my time here have been considered a rare sighting. One of my homies, who is actually like the reason that I knew about this place and applied for this job, was a buddy of mine from college. And he would talk about how he would go swimming and see like 30 to 40 leopard sharks just around the sandy bottom. And now they're a little rarer. And that's because they're a migratory species. So they are nomadic. They don't necessarily stay around in the same place for too long. Um, they're benthic like creatures, so they like to stay on the seafloor, and prefer like those sandy bottom ecosystems, uh, where those like crunchy critters, the slugs, the snails, the crabs. I guess slugs aren't crunchy, but slugs with shells.
Because that's what they eat. Sorry, audio was cut off.
They move all over the place, and that could be for a number of environmental factors. That could be temperature, that could be the presence or the absence of kelp. That could be people related, where I have more people in the cove or less people in the cove. Um, they're very elusive though. Every time I have seen one, it's like you see it, and as soon as it sees you, it swims away. It's one of those things where it's like I see a leopard shark and I'll pick my head up to tell the students there's a leopard shark, and then I'll look down and it's gone.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, they're a predator within our ecosystem, and they contribute to biodiversity in the sense that as they eat things, things have to reproduce, continuing to that genetic diversity within an ecosystem. And they have a lower birth rate than other organisms, so we're not worried about them like overtaking and overpopulating an area as well. So yeah, leopard sharks are so cool, so gentle. Their patterns on the back are unique to each and every one, so researching them can be as easy as snapping a picture and naming it, and then that is that leopard shark to you.
Yeah, thank you for telling me about leopard sharks. Um, it's very interesting how they're not as prominent in the area anymore compared to before. Um, it would have been really cool to like see one or to learn more about them. But I get what you're saying by how they're my migratory species. Hopefully you guys get to see one someday when you're there.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome. Crossing your fingers. And yeah, their spots are
Yeah.
really interesting. I think I've learned somewhere that the spots tell their age or their gender. I'm not sure if that's
For
accurate.
real?
And so like you were telling me, the older they get, the lighter they are. That's
Yeah,
very cool.
it is.
Um,
And I wonder if there's a purpose to that. Does it aid in camouflage? Do the older ones not need to be as camouflaged as the younger ones? That's new information to me. So I would be curious to look into that more.
hmm, that's interesting. That yeah, they might maybe because they're older, they're like, I don't have that much motivation to camouflage anymore. Maybe they don't have like the pigments for the
Yeah.
stuff. Interesting.
Yeah. It makes me think of, or I'm reminded of like on certain species of trees, the younger leaves will have like a serrated edge to them to deter insects from eating them. But then as the leaves are more mature and have been on the tree for longer, the tree spends less energy into keeping that sharp shape and allows them to be rounded out as it puts energy into like new growth or like a fruit production. And so it could be as the shark gets older, they spend more of their energy on just survival and like and moving around, breathing, and are less concerned as they get larger with being hidden. Fascinating.
Yeah, fascinating, different. It's
Yeah,
giving
I have so
paths.
many things I want to like look up now.
I know. Now I have to write this down and look it up too.
Write that down, write that down.
That's it. Or else my memory won't do me well.
Should mark. Awesome.
Okay. Um, I just totally forgot the national holidays that I was gonna do. So,
And what if today was National Forgiveness Day?
I,
Forgiveness Day.
mm, hey,
Then did you really forget? Who knows?
no, I didn't. I just celebrated a holiday.
What's today's national holiday?
Well, today's well, let's see, the cheese doodle day, cheese puff day. It's also Ash Wednesday.
Right on.
Mm-hmm. Lent has arrived. The weekend is more interesting. And I guess if that's when this episode's coming up, I think should say the weekend's national
For
holiday.
sure. Okay.
Um, it's a National Peanut Cluster Day.
Whoa.
Are you a fan of peanuts or chocolate?
I am. Both, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Very much so.
Awesome. Me too. I can feel you on that.
It's a
Peanuts,
phenomenal
chocolate.
combination of the two.
Oh yes, it is.
Shout out to all my homies with peanut allergies. I feel for you.
Mm-hmm. They're missing
Yeah.
out. They're absolutely missing out. Um, the peanut pretzels too. Oh my God.
Yeah, those are dank.
Mhm.
Yeah, those are really good snacks.
And then, oh, Sunday's daylight saving day. We get 1 hour less of sleep.
Oof.
No, no,
Not the
not the
vibe.
vibe, not the vibe.
Oh man. That's good to know though. I'm glad I'm able to mentally prepare for that now on Wednesday
Mhm.
instead of having that hit Sunday night,
Oh
Saturday
yeah.
morning. Saturday? Yeah, whenever.
Mhm.
Thank you for the heads up.
Yes, we need to mentally prepare for this. This is a big change. That 1 hour is gonna be detrimental. It's also National Meatball Day. So,
Right on.
mhm. Some spaghetti and meatballs sound delicious. Ooh,
That would be good.
mhm. Yeah. And so that's the holidays.
Woohoo.
Hmm. Um, Now do we want to end off the episode with sea otters?
Yeah, you had prompted me with a question about local extinctions. I remember episode 2, I believe you started talking about sea otters. And so that was just like you've done a phenomenal job scaffolding and building a foundation with like what sea otters are and the role they play in the ecosystem. Um, they were there is considered a localized extinction around Catalina Island where we used to have sea otters, um, but they were hunted for the fur trade, hunted to extinction around Catalina. Um, it was like in the early 1900s that the population went fully extinct, and around, I believe it was 1911. Let me check my notes. Yeah, 1911 that the first seal treaty was enacted. So we were like so close to like getting that protection out there. Um, before we lost them all. Uh, and there have been a couple of translocation efforts. Let's see, between 1987 and 1990, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services moved 140 otters to San Nicolas Island. And that population has stayed and been like well established and is maintained and living there. They have tried to reintroduce, yeah, snaps, claps, absolutely. They have tried to reintroduce otters to Catalina, and I think they can sense the bad vibe. Like they can like they don't stay. And again, that's environmental factors, chemical cues in the water, personal preference, you know. But I also think that maybe there's part of that animal instinct that tells them like this was not a safe space. Who knows now, But
Hmm.
hopefully that would be so fun if we got to see sea otters again around this area.
Hmm.
And again, kind of going back to why we want to promote biodiversity, right? Is the otters, like you talked about in episode 2, are that keystone species that help keep sea urchin populations in check so that they don't destroy entire kelp forests. Uh,
Hmm.
and that could have absolutely happened here with the extinction of the otter. But we have the sheephead wrasse in our cove with its almost like human-like teeth and large jaws. They're able to like pick those urchins up and they like flip them and they crush that exoskeleton and cause a feeding frenzy that almost every fish within the area and the kelp, as that nutrients floats around in the water, they just absorb it through their
Hmm.
fronds.
Hmm.
Um, so that sheephead being in the area was able to fill that gap that the sea otters left behind. And that allowed us to keep our kelp forest ecosystem nice and healthy and have that as our foundational species.
Wow, that's really cool. And
Yeah, it is.
thankful to those sheepheads because what would the
Grateful for the
kelp
sheephead.
so
So much
grateful.
gratitude.
Hmm. What would the kelp forests do without the sheepheads when the sea otters went extinct in the area?
Like what if we
Oh,
didn't have the sheephead?
yeah.
I would hypothesize that the what you would see this like boom in sea otter population as they just eat the kelp. I would be curious as to what their predators in the ecosystem were, and if the sea otter predator, aside from the humans,
Hmm.
um, if they would have kept the population kind of in equilibrium, or if the sea otters would have, like I was starting to say, would have had this big boom. We have all these sea otters, they're eating all of the urchins. Um, and urchins kind of get a bad rap, honestly. They're really important for like clearing spaces on rocks for like new like algae polyps to like settle and like solidify themselves onto rocks. Anemones need clean surfaces, and even abalone larvae require like a rocky substrate of a chemical composition that it likes.
Hmm.
And if there's little bits of algae growing on there, these things would have nowhere to settle. Um, so yeah, if we didn't have the sheephead, maybe the ecosystem would have been totally fine, and the otters and the urchins and the kelp all would have like had this like nice like give and take. But it's also a possibility that the otters could have overdone it. So that's a really interesting question to theorize. Who
That
knows if what I said even made sense? Well, I'll listen back to this later and be like, why did I say that? Uh, did that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, that kind of answered my question.
All right,
I
cool. As
was,
long as I kind of answered it, then I'm cool with that.
hey, as long as it feels some kind of idea in my brain, that's all that matters. And I was actually asking that question as like a theoretical, because like you know how you mentioned like the sea otters went extinct and then the sheepheads were there to kind of keep the sea urchins in check. I was actually asking that question, oh, what would we do without the sheepheads? But you made that into a wonderful explanation of an
Sweet.
hypothetical, theoretical answer. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, now I remember me asking about extinct animals that used to be that like around Catalina. So thank you for that explanation and for that connection all the way back to episode 2.
Yeah, of
Definitely
course.
giving me memories. Yeah, I think that pretty much wraps it up.
Right on. Thank you so much for having me again. I was so excited to be able to do this. And again, like I watched as the episodes started to come out, and I tried not to be so selfish to be like, "Where's my episode?" But I'm glad we were able to get this rescheduled. Um, I hope you and the rest of the Scorpions have had a fantastic year and that y'all are continuing to go out there and explore and connect with the environment. Um, and yeah, I'll tell Logan and Laura y'all say hi.
Oh yeah, say hi to them for us,
Sure.
for all of us. And
Absolutely.
one of the Scorpion members did something with jellyfish for her because she's interested in theater.
Right
So,
on.
and she's also an engineering um gal.
Right on.
And so She engineered jellyfish with like constant waving, like the what's it called? Tentacles? No.
Yeah.
Yeah, tentacles, with LED lights, and then so it was just kind of in a background of like a puppet show set, and it was so cool. It was awesome. So that was
Oh,
something that kind of reminded me of Kelp and you guys.
oh, that's so fun.
Hmm.
That's awesome. Shout out Scorpions. We
Shout
were the
out
best,
Scorpion. We were. No doubt we were the best group.
no doubt.
Hmm. Well, nice to talk to you again. Hey, I get you. That was not selfish. If I were you, I would have been so sad because I would be like, where's that 30-minute episode? Like, what happened?
But
So
it's been awesome to just see that you're still like you're uploading episodes still. Like that Kelp program helped drive this project, this passion, this idea that you had. Um, Reminds me and reminds all of my fellow instructors the impact that we have on the students that we get to work with. And so you keep doing your thing. It's awesome to see.
yeah, definitely. I was thinking about it before, and I think going to Cal really just pressed the green light.
Let's go.
So yeah, it was really nice to talk to you again, and look forward to hearing your voice this weekend. Be
Yeah,
excited.
I'll get all the Kelp staff together. We'll have a big watch party in the
Okay.
dining hall.
Okay. Wonderful. Lovely.
Thank you, Caroline. Have a
Thank
great rest
you.
of your afternoon.
You too. Nice to see you. Bye.
Bye.
And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode on Coral Talks. Have a wonderful day. Love you guys. See you next time.